The conflict between Iran and Israel, which has been growing for many years, reached one of its most dangerous stages in 2026. What began as a shadow war involving cyber attacks, proxy militias, and limited strikes has escalated into direct military confrontation involving Iran, Israel, and the United States. This conflict has created serious concerns about a wider Middle East war and has affected global politics, oil markets, and international security. Background of the Iran-Israel conflict. The hostility between Iran and Israel did not start recently. It has deep political and ideological roots going back decades. After the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Iran's leadership began openly opposing Israel and supporting groups that oppose Israel, such as Hezbollah and Hamas. Israel, on the other hand, considers Iran one of its biggest security threats, especially because of Iran's nuclear program and missile development. Israel believes that if Iran develops nuclear weapons, it could threaten Israel's existence. Because of this fear, Israel has carried out covert operations and attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities over the years. For many years, the conflict remained indirect. Instead of fighting each other directly, both countries supported allies and proxy groups across the Middle East. However, tensions began rising sharply after 2023 due to regional conflicts, especially the Gaza war and increased Iranian influence in the region. The 2025 escalation. In June 2025, tensions exploded into a new phase when Israel launched airstrikes on Iranian military and nuclear-related sites. The operation targeted facilities believed to be connected with Iran's nuclear program. Iran responded with a large-scale retaliation. According to reports, Iran launched more than 150 ballistic missiles and over 100 drones toward Israeli territory. Many of these missiles were intercepted by Israel's air defense systems, such as Iron Dome and Arrow, but some managed to hit buildings and infrastructure. Although the conflict lasted only a short time, it showed that Iran and Israel were willing to strike each other directly. A temporary ceasefire was announced later in June 2025 under international pressure, but tensions remained extremely high. The major war in February 2026. The situation became far more serious on 28 February 2026 when Israel and the United States launched large-scale attacks on Iran. These attacks targeted military bases, missile sites, air defense systems, and infrastructure across the country. The strikes were justified by the U.S. and Israel as a move to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions and weaken its military capabilities. During the early phase of these attacks, reports indicated that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed, which created major political uncertainty inside Iran. This event shocked the world and pushed Iran to respond aggressively. Iran's retaliation. Iran quickly launched retaliation against Israel and American forces in the region. Iranian forces fired large numbers of missiles and drones toward Israeli cities and American military bases in Gulf countries. Between 28 February and 4 March, dozens of missile attacks were launched towards Israel. Some missiles struck civilian areas in cities like Tel Aviv and nearby locations, causing casualties and damage. At the same time, Iran also targeted American bases in the region and shipping routes in the Persian Gulf. Iranian drones and missiles were also used in attacks against nearby countries. For example, strikes were reported against ports and shipping near Oman, damaging oil tankers and causing casualties among crews. These attacks demonstrated that the war was spreading beyond Israel and Iran, affecting the wider Middle East. Missile and drone warfare. One of the most important features of the war has been the massive use of missiles and drones. Iran has invested heavily in missile technology over the past 2 decades. Its strategy relies on launching large numbers of missiles and drones to overwhelm enemy defenses. During the conflict, Iran reportedly launched hundreds of missiles and drone attacks towards Israel and other targets in the region. Some were intercepted by Israel's advanced defense systems, such as Iron Dome and Arrow, but some still managed to reach their targets. In addition to Israel, Iran launched attacks on the United Arab Emirates, where falling debris and explosions caused casualties and damage to buildings in cities like Abu Dhabi and Dubai. These attacks showed how the conflict could affect multiple countries across the Gulf. Airstrikes inside Iran. The United States and Israel conducted extensive air campaigns inside Iran. Their strikes targeted missile launch sites, military command centers, air defense systems, nuclear-related facilities, and Revolutionary Guard bases. Reports suggest that thousands of targets were struck during the early phase of the campaign. The goal of these attacks was to weaken Iran's ability to launch missiles and prevent it from advancing its nuclear program. However, the bombing also caused significant damage to infrastructure and civilian areas. Civilian lives and humanitarian concerns. One of the most tragic aspects of the war has been the loss of civilian life. Iran reported that more than 1,300 civilians were killed during the conflict, with thousands more injured. A particularly controversial incident occurred when a school in Iran was destroyed by an explosion during the war, killing more than 160 people, most of them children. Investigations suggested the blast may have been caused by an airstrike. Such incidents have drawn international condemnation and raised concerns about violations of international humanitarian law. State of emergency in Israel. Because of the threat of Iranian missile attacks, Israel declared a nationwide state of emergency. Schools were closed, public gatherings were restricted, and thousands of reservist soldiers were mobilized. Hospitals even moved some operations underground to protect against missile strikes. Israeli citizens were instructed to stay near bomb shelters as air raid sirens frequently sounded across the country. The constant threat of missiles created fear and uncertainty among the population. Strait of Hormuz crisis. Another major consequence of the war has been disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil shipping routes in the world. After the attacks began, Iran warned that ships should not pass through the strait. Missile and drone attacks damaged several oil tankers in the region. Because around 20% of the world's oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz, any disruption there can affect global energy prices and international trade. As a result, oil prices increased and global markets reacted with uncertainty. Impact on Middle Eastern countries. The war has not remained limited to Iran and Israel. Several other countries have been affected. Countries in the Gulf region have experienced missile threats, airspace closures, and disruptions to transportation. For example, many flights across the Middle East were canceled or delayed due to security concerns. Some countries partially closed their airspace during the conflict. Thousands of travelers were stranded at airports while airlines had to reroute flights. Neighboring countries are worried that the conflict could expand further. Global political reactions. The international community has reacted strongly to the war. The United Nations and many governments have called for an immediate ceasefire to prevent further escalation. Different countries have taken different positions. Some Western countries support Israel's right to defend itself. Others criticize the attacks on Iran and call for diplomacy. Russia and China have urged restraint and negotiations. The conflict has also created divisions among global powers. Leadership crisis in Iran. The reported death of Iran's supreme leader created a major political crisis in the country. The supreme leader is the most powerful figure in Iran's political system. His death raised questions about who would lead the country and how Iran's government would respond to the war. Some analysts believe the leadership crisis could make Iran more aggressive, while others think it could push the country towards negotiations. Risk of a larger war. One of the biggest fears is that the Iran-Israel war could turn into a larger regional war. Iran has strong allies and partner groups across the Middle East, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, militia groups in Iraq, groups in Syria and Yemen. If these groups become fully involved, the conflict could spread across multiple countries. Israel has already launched strikes in Lebanon targeting Hezbollah positions. Economic impact. The war has also affected the global economy. Oil prices increased due to fears that the conflict could disrupt supply from the Middle East. Shipping companies became cautious about sending vessels through the Persian Gulf. Stock markets in some countries dropped as investors reacted to the uncertainty. The longer the conflict continues, the greater the economic impact could become. Current situation. As of now, the war remains ongoing with continued missile attacks, airstrikes, and military mobilization. Both sides appear determined to continue fighting. However, there are also signs that diplomatic efforts are beginning to take shape. Some countries are trying to mediate negotiations to prevent